The alarms in Nexus Prime Prison screamed through the night cycle. Red lights flashed in every cell block. Guards ran through the corridors, their heavy boots making loud sounds on the metal floors. But Kita sat quietly in his cell, smiling. He had waited 3 years for this moment. 3 years of watching, learning, and planning. The guards thought the power field around his cell could hold him. They were wrong. Keita stood up from his bed and walked to the blue energy wall that kept him inside. He could see the guards running past, too busy with the riot in Block C to notice him. That riot was no accident. He had planned it carefully, whispering to the right inmates at the right times. "Time to leave," he said softly. He raised his hands toward the energy wall. The guards had never understood what made him special. They thought his quantum powers were just for breaking things and fighting. But Kita could do so much more. He closed his eyes and felt the quantum field around him. To most people, quantum energy was invisible. But to Kita, it looked like tiny threads of light that he could touch and move. He reached out with his mind and began to pull these threads apart. The blue energy wall flickered once, twice, and then disappeared. The guards had made their force field strong, but they didn't know that anything made of energy could be unmade by someone who could see its smallest parts. Keita stepped out of his cell. He wore the plain gray prison uniform, but he walked like someone wearing the finest clothes. In the distance, he could hear shouting and fighting from the riot. Perfect. He walked calmly down the corridor, passing other cells. Some inmates saw him and started shouting, but he ignored them. He had chosen his path carefully, knowing which cameras were broken and which guards would be away from their posts. When he reached the end of the corridor, a young guard appeared, holding a shock stick. The guard's eyes went wide when he saw Kita. "Stop right there," the guard shouted, his voice shaking. Kita smiled kindly at him. "You should take a nap," he said. With a quick wave of his hand, he changed the quantum field around the guard's head. The guard's eyes rolled back, and he fell to the floor, sleeping peacefully. "Sweet dreams," Kita said, stepping over him. The next part was trickier. Kita had to cross the main yard to reach the landing pads where they kept the prison ships. He opened a side door and looked out. The yard was empty because everyone was dealing with the riot. The stars shone brightly overhead, and 3 moons lit up the night sky. Kita ran across the yard, keeping close to the shadows. He could hear alarm sounds coming from every building. His riot was working better than he had hoped. When he reached the landing pad, he found exactly what he wanted: a small prison transport ship, its engines still warm from a recent trip. The ship's security lock was simple for someone like Kita. He touched the control panel and sent quantum energy through its circuits. The door opened with a soft hiss. Just as he was about to step inside, bright lights suddenly turned on all around him. A loud voice boomed through speakers. "Kita, step away from the ship. You are surrounded." He looked up to see Warden Song standing on a balcony with 20 guards, all pointing their weapons at him. The warden looked angry but also worried. He knew what Kita could do. "Warden Song," Kita called out pleasantly, as if they were meeting for dinner. "Thank you for being such a good host these past 3 years, but I'm afraid I must leave now." "There's nowhere to go," the warden said. "Even if you steal that ship, we'll track you. The whole galaxy will be looking for you." Kita laughed. "I'm counting on it," he said. Then he raised both hands high above his head. What happened next would be talked about in Nexus Prime for years to come. The quantum energy erupted from Kita like a bright storm. The guards' weapons stopped working. The bright lights exploded in showers of sparks. And in the confusion, Kita slipped into the ship. By the time the backup lights came on, the ship was already rising into the air. Kita sat at the controls, humming to himself as he piloted the ship up toward the stars. "Attention all systems," he heard the warden's voice on the emergency channel. "This is Nexus Prime Prison. The galaxy's most dangerous criminal has escaped. Repeat, Kita has escaped. All ships on alert. Keita switched off the radio and smiled. The real fun was about to begin. The Galactic Council chamber was silent as the hologram played. Council members from 100 different species watched Keita's escape for the 10th time. When the recording ended, the chamber erupted in angry voices. Li Hejin stood quietly in the back of the room, studying their reactions. The council had called all the top bounty hunters in the galaxy to this meeting. Most of them were tall, heavily armed, and covered in advanced technology. Next to them, Hejin looked out of place in her simple black jacket and boots. "Quiet," shouted Council Leader Do Young, his voice cutting through the noise. "We have increased the bounty to 50 million credits. Keita must be caught before he causes more damage." A tall hunter with blue skin stepped forward. "Why call humans to this meeting? They barely have space travel. What can they do against someone who controls quantum energy?" Hejin smiled but said nothing. She was used to this kind of talk. The advanced species always underestimated humans. That was their biggest mistake. "The human stays," Du Young said firmly. "We need every hunter we can get. Keita has already attacked 3 research stations. He steals quantum technology and disappears before our fastest ships can catch him." Hejin walked to the center of the room. All eyes turned to her. "Show me the attack sites again," she said. The hologram changed to show a map of the galaxy. Red dots marked where Keita had struck. The other hunters had studied this map for hours, using advanced AI to look for patterns. But they were looking in the wrong way. "There," Hejin said, pointing. "He's not choosing targets based on technology or security levels. He's choosing them based on beauty." The room went quiet. Hejin continued. "Look at the views from each station. Crystal rings around gas giants, binary stars at sunset, aurora fields. He's not just stealing technology. He's visiting the most beautiful places in the galaxy." "That's impossible to prove," said the blue-skinned hunter. "Criminals don't make choices based on something as simple as beauty." Hejin shook her head. "Humans have been tracking criminals for thousands of years. Sometimes the most complex creatures have the simplest needs. Keita spent 3 years in a gray cell. Now he wants to see beautiful things." She turned to Council Leader Do Young. "Give me the contract. I'll find him." "Why should we trust you?" asked another hunter. "What makes you different?" Hejin pulled out an old compass from her pocket. The other hunters laughed at the simple metal tool. "Because while you track him with quantum sensors and AI predictions, I'll track him the human way. We learn to think like our prey, to understand them. Your technology is amazing, but it can't understand beauty or loneliness or the need to see wonderful things." Do Young studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "The contract is yours, Hunter Lee. But you have 1 month. After that, we send in the military." Hejin put away her compass and walked out of the chamber. Behind her, she could hear the other hunters arguing with the council. She didn't care. She had work to do. In her small ship, Hejin looked at the star map again. She had told the council part of the truth, but not all of it. She understood Keita better than they knew. Because like him, she had once been locked away, unable to see the stars. "Where are you going next?" she whispered, studying the map. Then she saw it, a small note about a quantum research station near the Rainbow Nebula, the most colorful site in this part of the galaxy. Hejin started her ship's engines. She didn't need quantum sensors or AI predictions. She just needed to remember what it felt like to see beauty after years of seeing nothing at all. As her ship lifted off, Hejin smiled. The hunt had begun. The Rainbow Nebula lived up to its name. Keita stood at the viewing window of the research station, watching the colors dance across space. Purples and greens mixed with bright reds and blues, creating patterns that no artist could paint. He had waited his whole life to see this. Behind him, 3 scientists lay unconscious on the floor. He hadn't wanted to hurt them, but they had tried to stop him from taking the quantum core. The small silver cylinder in his pocket felt heavy with importance. They didn't understand why he needed it. Beautiful, isn't it? A voice said from the doorway. Kita turned quickly. A woman stood there, wearing a simple black jacket. She looked different from the other hunters who had chased him. No heavy armor, no big weapons, just calm eyes that watched him carefully. "You're human," he said, surprised. "The council sent a human to catch me." He-Jin stepped into the room, keeping her distance. "They didn't send me. I chose to come. I knew you would be here." Kaita raised his eyebrows. "How?" "I disabled all the tracking systems." "I didn't use tracking systems," He-Jin said. "I just asked myself where someone would go after being locked away from beauty for 3 years." For the first time since his escape, Kita felt uncertain. The other hunters had been easy to predict. They followed their computers and scanners. But this human, she thought differently. "The quantum core," He-Jin said, pointing to his pocket. "That's the third one you've stolen. Why do you need them?" Keita looked back at the nebula. "You wouldn't understand. Nobody understands. Try me," He-Jin said. "I have time." Keita laughed, but there was no joy in it. "Time. That's exactly what we don't have." He raised his hands, and quantum energy began to swirl around him. He-Jin didn't move. She didn't draw a weapon. She just watched him with those calm eyes. "Running again?" she asked. "Like you ran from the prison. From the other stations." "I'm not running," Kita said angrily. "I'm trying to save everyone. But they're too blind to see what's coming." A small smile appeared on He-Jin's face. "Now we're getting somewhere." "What's coming, Kita?" Before he could answer, alarms started ringing through the station. Kita looked at the security screens. 5 police ships had just arrived. "Your backup?" he asked He-Jin. She shook her head. "I work alone. They must have followed one of us." Kaita made a quick decision. With a wave of his hand, he sent quantum energy through the station's systems. The lights flickered, and the doors began to close. "If you're really working alone," he said to He-Jin, "you might want to run. This station's power core is about to overload." He-Jin looked at him for a long moment. "You're not a killer, Kita. Those scientists behind you are still breathing. You could have killed them, but you didn't." "Don't pretend to know me, human," Kita said. But her words bothered him. She saw too much. The station shook as the power core began to fail. Kita ran to the emergency pods, but he looked back one last time. He-Jin was helping the scientists to their feet, leading them to safety. As his escape pod shot into space, Kita watched the research station's lights go dark. The rainbow nebula's colors reflected off his pod's window, still beautiful, still peaceful. But for the first time since his escape, he felt troubled. This human hunter was different. She didn't just chase him, she understood him. And that made her more dangerous than any quantum sensor or AI tracker. Kita set course for his next target, but his usual confidence was shaken. He had to be more careful now. The human was watching, and somehow, she could see right through him. New Seoul Station floated in space like a giant silver wheel. Thousands of ships came and went every day, making it the perfect place to hide. Kita walked through the crowded market level, wearing expensive clothes he had bought with some of his stolen credits. No one looked twice at him. He needed to meet his contact here. The man had promised to tell him about a secret quantum research facility. Kita checked his reflection in a shop window. He had changed his hair color and styled it differently, but his eyes remained the same, dark and intense. The meeting place was a small tea shop overlooking the station's garden level. Kita arrived early and chose a table in a corner. The artificial sunlight made the trees and flowers below look almost real. He ordered tea and waited. He-Jin was already there. She sat at the counter, dressed like a merchant in flowing robes. Kita almost walked past her before he recognized her. When their eyes met, neither of them moved. "Your disguise is good," He-Jin said quietly, "but you walk like someone who's being watched." It gives you away. Keita sat down at her table. Around them, other customers continued their conversations, unaware of who they were. "Where's your backup?" he asked. "More police ships waiting to ambush me." "No backup," He-Jin said, pouring tea into 2 cups. "Just me. And you won't run this time. You want to know how I keep finding you." She was right. That question had kept him awake for days. "You're just a human," he said. "Your species barely understands quantum physics. How do you do it?" He-Jin smiled. "Humans hunted before we understood physics. We learned to read tracks, to understand patterns, to think like our prey. Technology is useful, but understanding is better." "I'm not your prey," Keita said sharply. "No," He-Jin agreed. "You're someone who sees something terrible coming. Something that scares you enough to become the most wanted criminal in the galaxy." Keita's hands began to glow with quantum energy. Several customers noticed and quickly left their tables. "You don't know anything," he said. "I know you're collecting quantum cores," He-Jin said calmly. "I know you're building something. And I know you keep choosing research stations with beautiful views because part of you wants to be found, wants someone to understand." Keita stood up suddenly, knocking over his teacup. "You're wrong." He-Jin stood too, but she moved slowly, carefully. "Then why are you here, Keita? Your contact isn't coming. I found him yesterday. You knew it was a trap, but you came anyway, because you wanted to talk to me." The quantum energy around Keita's hands grew brighter. Security alarms began to sound throughout the station. "Stay away from me," he warned. Instead, He-Jin stepped closer. "Show me," she said softly. "Show me what you're so afraid of." For a moment, Keita almost did, almost shared the visions that haunted him, the danger he had seen coming. But then security officers appeared at both ends of the market. He-Jin moved faster than he expected. Her hand touched his arm, and he felt something sharp pierce his skin. "A tracking device," she explained. "Old technology. No quantum signals to detect." Keita pulled away, stumbling. The world began to blur. "What did you?" "Just a sedative," He-Jin said. "Time to sleep, Keita." But Keita had one last trick. As he fell, he released a burst of quantum energy that shattered every window on the level. In the chaos that followed, he managed to escape through a maintenance tunnel, though his steps were unsteady. He-Jin watched him go, holding the empty syringe. She hadn't expected the sedative to work, but that wasn't the point. The tracking device was microscopic, hidden in the liquid. Now she would always know where he was. And more importantly, she had seen something in his eyes when she mentioned his fear, something that told her she was right. Keita wasn't just running from the law. He was running towards something that terrified him. He-Jin touched her communicator, Council Leader Du-Young. "I need more time. There's something bigger happening here, something we're all missing." Keita sat in his hidden base on an abandoned mining asteroid, surrounded by holographic screens. Each screen showed different information about humans, their history, their wars, their survival stories. He had been studying them for days, trying to understand. The sedative from He-Jin's trap had worn off, but her words still bothered him. She had seen through his disguise, understood his patterns. No other hunter had come close. He needed to know why. On one screen, he watched ancient human battles. They fought with simple metal weapons while other species already had energy guns. On another screen, he saw humans surviving on harsh planets where other species needed special suits. A third screen showed their art, their music, their stories. "Primitive but clever," he muttered, touching the spot on his arm where He-Jin had injected him. He had found the tracking device and removed it, but he kept it in a small box on his desk. Sometimes he looked at it, amazed by its simple design. A warning light flashed on his computer. One of his sensor probes had detected something at the edge of known space. Keita quickly checked the readings and felt his heart stop. It was happening faster than he had predicted. He pulled up the quantum cores he had stolen, now connected in a complex pattern. Energy flowed between them, creating a detection field more powerful than anything the Galactic Council had. The cores showed him what was coming. A tear in space itself, growing larger every day. They need to know, he said to himself. But they won't believe me. They never do. His computer beeped again. Someone was approaching the asteroid. Kita checked the sensors and laughed softly. It was Ho-Jin's ship. The tracking device in the box was a fake. She must have put another one on him, even smaller, even harder to find. Instead of running, Kita waited. He kept watching the human history screens while her ship got closer. These humans surprised him. They had faced extinction many times but always survived. They had been underestimated by every advanced species they met, but they kept proving themselves. Ho-Jin's ship docked at the hidden entrance. Kita watched on the security cameras as she stepped out, still wearing her simple black jacket. No weapons visible, but he knew better now. Humans were never as harmless as they looked. "Welcome to my home," he said through the speaker system. "I suppose I should thank you. You've taught me a lot about humans these past few days." Ho-Jin walked through the corridors, following his voice. "And what did you learn?" "That being primitive doesn't mean being simple," Kita replied. "That sometimes older methods work better than new technology. That humans see patterns others miss because you don't trust computers to do your thinking." She reached the main door to his control room. Kita looked at his quantum cores again, at the readings that showed disaster approaching. He had spent years trying to warn people, but no one would listen to a criminal. "Are you going to run again?" Ho-Jin asked through the door. Kita made his decision. Perhaps he had been looking for the wrong allies. Perhaps he needed someone primitive enough to believe in danger without needing advanced computers to prove it. "No more running," he said, and opened the door. "Come in, Ho-Jin. I have something to show you. Something that terrifies every quantum sensor in the galaxy, but that your simple human eyes might understand better than all our advanced technology." Ho-Jin stepped into the room, her eyes taking in the quantum cores, the screens of human history, and the warning signals from deep space. "Show me," she said simply. And for the first time since he discovered the coming danger, Kita felt a small spark of hope. Ho-Jin stood before the large screen in Kita's control room, watching the swirling patterns of quantum energy at the edge of known space. The patterns looked wrong somehow, like a crack in glass spreading slowly but steadily. 3 years ago, I was working at the Quantum Research Center on Nexus Prime, Kita explained. He stood next to her, his voice quiet but intense. "I was the first to see it, a tear in the fabric of space itself." "The prison where you were held," Ho-Jin said, understanding filling her eyes. "You didn't end up there by accident." Kita nodded. "I tried to warn them. Showed them my calculations, my quantum readings, but they said I was mad. Dangerous. They locked me away to keep me quiet." Ho-Jin touched the screen, tracing the strange patterns with her finger. "But you kept watching, even from your cell." "My quantum abilities let me see things others can't," Kita said. "The tear is growing. Something is coming through. Something old. Hungry. The quantum cores I stole, I needed them to build this detection network, to prove I was right." Ho-Jin turned to look at the quantum cores, connected in their complex pattern. "The Council scientists have the best equipment in the galaxy. Why can't they see this?" Kita laughed bitterly. "Because they trust their machines too much. The tear, it doesn't show up on normal sensors. It's like a blind spot in their technology. They're so advanced, they've forgotten how to see with their own eyes." "Show me the data," Ho-Jin said. "All of it. From the beginning." For the next few hours, Kita shared everything. His first discovery of the tear, his failed attempts to warn people, his escape plans, the quantum core network he had built. Ho-Jin listened and watched, asking simple but sharp questions that often made Kita see things in new ways. "Here," she said suddenly, pointing to a pattern. The tear grows faster when nearby ships use quantum drives. The more advanced the technology, the bigger the problem gets. Kaita stared at her in surprise. He had spent months studying the data and missed this pattern. You saw that just by looking. Humans are good at finding patterns, He-Jin said. We had to be. We didn't have advanced technology to help us for most of our history. We learned to trust our eyes, our instincts. A loud alarm suddenly filled the room. Kita rushed to his controls. The tear was pulsing, growing larger than ever before. Through the quantum network, they could see something moving in the darkness beyond. It's happening faster than I predicted, Kita said, his hands moving quickly over the controls. The Council needs to know. All ships with quantum drives need to be shut down immediately. He-Jin watched the darkness moving behind the tear. Her human eyes saw shapes that the sensors missed. Vast, ancient things stirring in the void. They won't believe just data, she said. They'll need to see it for themselves. Keita looked at her. What are you suggesting? Take me to the tier, He-Jin said. I'll record everything. The Council knows me, trusts me. And more importantly, they know I don't understand enough about quantum physics to fake something like this. It's dangerous, Keita warned. We don't know what's on the other side. He-Jin smiled. Humans are good at dealing with the unknown. It's how we survived this long. She held out her hand to him. Partners. Keita looked at her hand, then at the tear growing in space. He had worked alone for so long, carrying this terrible knowledge by himself. Perhaps it was time to trust someone else, someone who saw the world differently. He took her hand. Partners. Keita's ship moved silently through space, its quantum drive turned off to avoid making the tear grow larger. He-Jin sat in the co-pilot's seat, checking the old-style navigation instruments she had brought from her own ship. They were close to the tear now, close enough to see it without sensors. It looks like the northern lights on Earth, He-Jin said, watching the strange colors ripple across space. Beautiful but wrong. Keita adjusted their course carefully. The quantum cores are picking up stronger readings now. Whatever is on the other side, it's aware of us. He-Jin activated her recording devices. She had brought 3 different kinds, knowing the Council would check them for any signs of tampering. Tell me again what you saw in your first vision of this place. Darkness, Keita said quietly, but not empty darkness. Living darkness. Ancient beings that sleep between worlds. Our quantum technology is waking them up. Every advanced ship that passes near here pulls the tear open a little more. The ship's regular sensors suddenly stopped working. Only Keita's quantum core network still functioned, showing them strange patterns of energy all around them. He-Jin looked out the window, trusting her human eyes more than any instrument. There, she said, pointing to a spot where space itself seemed to bend. That's where we need to go. Keita started to question her but stopped himself. He had learned to trust her instincts. They were different from his quantum senses, but just as valuable. He turned the ship toward the spot she had indicated. As they got closer, both of them saw it. A giant tear in space, like a rip in dark fabric. Through it, massive shapes moved in the darkness. He-Jin's recording devices captured everything, but she also took notes by hand, drawing what she saw in an old paper notebook. The Council's sensors would never see this, Keita said, understanding finally hitting him. They're too advanced. They filter out anything that doesn't match their idea of how space should work. But human eyes see what's actually there, not what they expect to see. Suddenly, something reached through the tear. It wasn't solid, wasn't energy, wasn't anything their science could describe. He-Jin drew it quickly in her notebook, while Keita tried to capture it with his quantum cores. The thing stretched toward their ship, curious about these small creatures examining its home. Don't move, He-Jin said calmly. It's not attacking. It's studying us, just like we're studying it. Keita wanted to run, to fight, to do something. But he forced himself to stay still, trusting her judgment. The strange being touched their ship gently, leaving marks that glowed with impossible colors. "The council needs to see this," He-Jin said, still recording everything. "But more importantly, they need to understand what it means. These beings aren't evil. They're just waking up because our quantum technology is disturbing their sleep." "How can you know that?" Kita asked, watching the massive shapes move beyond the tier. "Because they could have destroyed us easily," He-Jin explained. "But they're being careful, gentle even. They don't want to hurt us. They just want us to stop making so much noise." Kaita looked at the quantum cores he had stolen, understanding their true purpose at last. "We don't need these to fight them. We need them to find a way to let them sleep again." He-Jin nodded, closing her notebook. "And that's exactly what we'll tell the council." Together, the being withdrew from their ship, leaving those strange glowing marks as proof of their encounter. Kita started the engines, careful to use minimal power. As they turned back toward council space, he realized something had changed inside him. He was no longer alone with his terrible knowledge. Now he had a partner who saw things differently, and that made all the difference. The Galactic Council chamber was completely silent. On the large display screen, He-Jin's recordings played, showing the tear in space and the ancient beings beyond it. The strange glowing marks left on their ship still shimmered, proving the images were real. Council leader Du Young stood up slowly. "You expect us to believe that our quantum technology is disturbing sleeping space creatures. See for yourself," He-Jin said. She opened her paper notebook and walked around the chamber, showing her drawings to each council member. Next to each sketch, she had written simple, clear observations in human language that any species could understand. Kita stepped forward. The council guards tensed, but didn't stop him. "Your own sensors can't see them because they're too advanced," he explained. "The quantum cores I stole weren't for weapons. I built a network that could detect things your normal sensors filter out." A science advisor shook her head. "This is impossible. Our technology is perfect. It sees everything." "No," He-Jin said firmly. "Your technology sees what it expects to see. Sometimes you need simple eyes to see the truth. Human eyes. Eyes that evolved looking for predators in the dark, finding patterns in chaos." She played another recording. This one showed how the beings had touched their ship gently, carefully, like a curious child examining a new toy. "They're not our enemies. They just want to sleep. But our quantum engines are like bright lights and loud noises in their bedroom." Kita connected his quantum cores to the council's systems. "Look at the data. Every time a quantum drive activates near the tier, it grows bigger. The beings stir more. If we don't change something, they'll fully wake up. And our galaxy isn't ready for that." Council leader Do Young studied both of them carefully. A criminal and a human bounty hunter. Not the experts I would have chosen for this discovery. He paused, then smiled slightly. "But perhaps that's exactly why you found it. You both see things differently from us." Over the next few hours, Kita and He-Jin explained everything they had learned. The council listened, asked questions, and slowly began to understand. By the end of the day, they had made their decision. "Kita," Du Young announced, "your criminal record is cleared. Instead, you will lead a new research team. Your mission is to develop quantum technology that won't disturb these ancient beings." Keita bowed deeply, feeling the weight of years of fear and loneliness lift from his shoulders. "Thank you, Council Leader." "And He-Jin," Du Young continued, "you have shown us that humanity's perspective is valuable to the galaxy. We offer you a position as Earth's first representative on the Galactic Council." He-Jin smiled. "I accept on one condition. Kita and I continue to work together. His quantum senses and my human instincts make a good team." Later, as they walked through the council station's garden level, Kita looked at He-Jin. "You know what," he said, "when I first saw you were human, I thought the council was insulting me by sending such a primitive hunter. And now? Hejin asked. Now I understand that being primitive isn't the same as being simple. Humans survived because you learned to see what others miss, to trust your instincts, to face the unknown without fear. He paused. I'm glad you were the one who caught me. Hejin laughed. I didn't catch you. I understood you. Sometimes that's more important. Above them, through the station's clear dome, they could see the stars. Somewhere out there, ancient beings slept in the dark between worlds. But now the galaxy knew about them, thanks to a criminal who could see quantum energy and a human who could see the truth with simple eyes. Together, they had changed the future of two civilizations, the most advanced species in the galaxy, and the ones they had once called primitive. And this was just the beginning.